Hello, how are you? I'm Matthew, and this is Truth from the Booth on Folked Up Radio. Thanks for making space for me and my guests. Joining me by phone today is Elysha Whitlock, founder and executive director of the village Summerside. Yes, we are headed to beautiful Prince Edward Island. During this talk, we'll discuss the Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser, a powerful show of community support for Lifehouse, one of the shelters carrying the weight of this crisis every single day. The question now is simple. How successful was it? And how far does that support actually go when shelters are already stretched to the limit? Elysha will tell us about the relaunching of a homelessness prevention program with new funding aimed at stopping people from losing their housing in the first place. What makes it work? And what possible changes could be implemented before more islanders slip through the cracks? So much great work behind the scenes. The business community is pitching in. Safe Summerside donating recycled bicycles. Tim Horton gift cards helping people get through another cold day. We will bring all of that to light for you. Then there's the backpack fundraiser. Essentials packed for people who have nothing. Woodstock, New Brunswick is running something similar. The question is, how do grassroots ideas like that turn into real, lasting support? Elysha has an answer. We'll also talk about the Hands of the Homeless video that's making people stop and pay attention. And because these are tense times, families, teachers, kids, everyone feeling the strain, how are islanders faring? Probably the same as the rest of their maritime neighbors. And 1 year after the request, the folks of Summerside are still asking the same question. Where is the warming center? Let's talk about it. I'm Matthew, and my 30-minute conversation with Elysha Whitlock of Summerside PEI is uninterrupted next on Folked Up Radio. Just so you know, protesting the government in Nova Scotia isn't some new TikTok trend. It's older than half the buildings downtown. In 1848, people in Halifax were already fed up with colonial elites calling the shots. They pushed, they organized, they forced responsible government into existence. No permission slip, just pressure. Fast forward to Cape Breton Island, 1925. Coal miners starving while companies cashed in. When William Davis was shot dead during a strike, thousands walked. Not politely, not quietly. They shut it down. That wasn't civil disagreement. That was survival. The 60s and 70s, students at Dalhousie University filled streets over war and inequality. Mi'kmaq activists demanded treaty rights be honored, not ignored. Women demanded equity. Workers demanded dignity. And today, healthcare rallies, education strikes, housing protests, climate marches, bad budgets. Same fight, different decade. Here's the reality. Protest in Nova Scotia isn't chaos. It's what happens when the government forgets who signs the paycheck. This province was built on people who refuse to stay quiet. And history says when Nova Scotians hit the street, somebody eventually listens. Halifax, Nova Scotia, home of talk radio, Truth from the Booth, an ongoing awareness campaign, keeping Canada's housing crisis on the front burner and in the moment, right here in the Halifax Regional Municipality, the Maritimes, and beyond. True, real-life stories told by those living it, existing in the streets. They bear all and provide you a brief glimpse into an unimaginable world of misery and disappointment, resilience, and triumph. Hear from those with boots on the ground advocating for change now. The stories of the unhoused need to be told by them to educate you, all of us. Hear all the conversations Sundays at 10 a.m. with a repeat at 6 p.m. here on folkedupradio.com. Now, back to today's fantastic guest. Elysha Whitlock, Executive Director of the Village Summerside. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Let's get right into this. I sent you some talking points. I saw your presentation from last year in regards to the warming center. We'll talk about that at the end of the conversation. But for the audience, I just want to let you know, for my research, all I did is I went to the Village Summerside Facebook page, did some research, and pulled all the talking points off of their Facebook page. So everything that we're about to talk about, they've already put out in public, so we are just expanding on that. So let's get into this. One of the first things I noticed, Elysha, was a Facebook post basically asking the public to show a little human decency. You're putting a post out there for people to show dignity, safety, and respect towards the unhoused. How does that make you feel to have to put a post out like that in your own community in 2026?
Honestly, it was hard to have to make that post, but it was necessary. At the time, speaking up, it honestly felt like I was standing up for people who are often written off or left without a voice to speak up for themselves. A lot of our unhoused community members were experiencing behaviors that honestly put people at risk, and it was stripping people of their dignity. So we honestly had no choice. We had to put that call out to the community, more or less a call out to a higher standard. My goal at the time was never to shame anybody. Sometimes we need to speak up, not to shame others, but to educate them. And our post was more or less a reminder to all of our community members that compassion honestly keeps everybody safer.
Oh, I completely agree. Before we get too deep into this conversation, tell us a little bit of the background of the village Summerside and how you became executive director of this.
Okay, I'm actually the founder. I created the village Summerside. I started to notice an increase in our unhoused population, and it was growing rapidly. And although we do have many agencies and organizations here on the island, I wasn't seeing the on-the-street outreach work really happening within the city of Summerside. So that's when I took it upon myself, and I decided it was time that luckily, I got very fortunate with a large group of volunteers, but we formed the village because, as the title says, it takes a village. We decided we'd put together a little nonprofit here in our own community. It's based solely on community donations and fundraising, and it is ran 100%. All of us are volunteers. We come from all different walks of life, but at the end of the day, we share one major value, and it is compassion. We care for all community members, whether they're living unhoused or if they are fortunate to be housed. We saw that the need was there, so we started the village. We basically provide emergency supplies, warm-up supports. We also assist with connecting people to wraparound services, and I'm sure you're familiar with what I mean by wraparound services. We help people get in contact with shelters, long-term housing, and all other forms of wraparound services, whether that be mental health and addiction supports. We also assist with things like creating job resumes. We assist with finding housing. There's quite often occasions that we assist with transportation to and from a lot of these important appointments. But we saw the need was there, and that's how the village came to be.
Can you speak a little bit about the professionalism or the background of, I believe there's 37 roughly volunteers. What are they bringing to the table? What's their background? What's their lived experience, if any?
Yep. We do actually have 4 volunteers who have personally experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. So thankfully they do come with the lived experience. They have been amazing to work with. A lot of our volunteers, myself, I come from a mental health background. I have degrees in psychology. I also have quite a few volunteers who come from the social work department. We have a nurse practitioner volunteer that he focuses his time on going around and checking on the health and well-being of our unhoused community members. Some of our volunteers are stay-at-home parents, full-time parents. Some of them are employees of our provincial and federal government. At the end of the day, though, we all share the same concern for what's happening in our community, and we all just share the same care and the need to help.
Fantastic. What's the population of Summerside, Prince Edward Island?
I think we're sitting at around 20,000 right now for Summerside.
Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't realize the number was going to be that large.
Yeah, and that's based in 2016, we were at 15,000. And like every other province, we have had an increase on newcomers as well. So I'd have to garner that number would be pushing 20,000 at this point.
20,000. Okay. I make no secret that this show is being recorded on a Friday morning. The sun is starting to come out here in the Halifax Regional Municipality. Elysha is in Summerside, Prince Edward Island. Snow on the ground there as well. You're going to be handing out tents at the end of this conversation. Is that correct?
We will be out this afternoon. We've recently launched a backpack fundraiser. So we will be out today handing out the backpacks that we have put together and accumulated, as well as checking on our folks who are still residing in our tents, just to ensure that they have all the essential items they need with the current weather happening.
When you say essential items and keeping with the backpack, what essential items are you putting in there? And I think it's great that you have 4 volunteers who have that lived experience, because their input is invaluable. So what's going into these backpacks?
Absolutely. So our backpacks include items such as gloves, toques, hand warmers, boot warmers, snack foods. We include Tim Hortons gift cards in all of them. I'm sure you've seen my posts where I speak on the importance of Tim Hortons gift cards. They may seem very minimal to many, but for those that are living unhoused, that provides warmth, shelter in between the shelter hours, along with a hot meal. So our backpacks basically include the essentials: gloves, toques, hand warmers, snacks, Tim Hortons gift cards. Many times we will also include in there, depending who they're going to, the ones that we do have living in our ice fishing tents. We keep them stocked with the little butane bottles to run their cook stoves that we provided when we first set up the tents. So the backpacks are very generic items. Our everyday essential items that we hand out, that varies greatly. Depending on the person and their situation, we are constantly stocked with sleeping bags, tarps, all of the usual hand warmers, toques, warm clothing, snow pants, winter jackets, butane for the cook stoves, propane for those who have buddy heaters.
How was all that funded? Like, where is all this coming from? This might be a good time to talk about people behind the scenes making donations, financially and otherwise. What's happening there?
So what I did is I was keeping a very, very close eye on the Red Shelter project happening in Halifax. I was touching base on quite a few occasions with Steve, who you're quite familiar with.
Yes.
And I was kind of reaching out and saying, okay, I see what you guys are doing over there. We're seeing a rising situation here in Summerside, PEI. What tips can you guys give me? I actually took a trip over to Halifax in the winter of 2025 just to kind of get eyes on the ground and see the steps that you guys were taking to keep these folks warm and alive through the winter. I then brought that back to PEI, and I started our own red fishing tent fundraising. So what we did with that initiative is we reached out to care and community members, and we basically asked anybody who was in a position to do so to help us fundraise the funds needed to purchase the insulated red fishing tents. We lucked out. We were able to purchase, we had 36 in total that we were able to hand out and get set up. On top of that, we also crowdfunded and got all the supplies needed to set those up. We have ours all set up on pallets with Tyvek, with tarps, and then we have the tarps typically over the tents as well. Each person that was given one of our insulated red fishing tents were also set up with, because a lot of them do still want to maintain their independence. So we've still always provided them with their own cook stoves, camp stoves, so that they are able to feel independent and cook certain food items for themselves. Everyone that was given one of the insulated red fishing tents were also provided with one of the buddy heaters, which in turn we then consistently provide the propane and the butane needed for both the cook stoves and the buddy heaters. But 100% of what we have done here has been based on our sponsorship by the amazing Y Service Club of Summerside. They have partnered with us for the last 2 years, and they have helped us ensure that we always have the essential items that we need. And other than their sponsorship, we have done this solely on crowdfunding and community support.
Fantastic. I'm smiling from ear to ear because I didn't realize that you had ties with the protests that I was a part of back in the winter of 2023 and the spring of 2024. Just fantastic stuff. The people working behind the scenes is just fantastic, and I'm glad that the tents that you are handing out are the insulated tents, because that's not what is happening here in the HRM. And going back a bit, the reason I talked about snow on the ground, I'm curious to know how a lot of communities every year, they have their coldest night of the year fundraiser. How was that? How successful was that for you? And who benefits from this?
So our Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser here in Summerside is in benefit of our Lifehouse shelter, which is a shelter for women and children. They are an amazing organization. While I sadly personally didn't get to attend, I was actually at the IWK with my child the night of the walk, so sadly I did have to miss it. I have not seen the final numbers yet raised, but I do know that it was an absolute success, as it was last year as well. And it's an honestly amazing shelter, and every time that I see any support going their way, I'm absolutely beaming and so happy for them, because they do amazing work.
So there's a lot of interconnecting between shelters on Prince Edward Island. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yes, I would say that that's a fair statement to make. I mean, we have our standard shelters that are either designated for women, children, or solely men. After 2 years of advocating nonstop, we did finally get our emergency non-barrier shelter, which is a low-barrier shelter that everybody is welcome at. That has finally opened and has been at full capacity almost since the day they opened. But that is still where the issue lies, based on the shelter hours, the lack of a warming center here in this community. While I am so thankful that we have the shelter services that we do, there is still a very obvious gap there, and the gap lies in the shelter hours. For example, unless we're having very extreme weather and the provincial government agrees to extend the shelter hours on a typical day, all of the folks that would be staying at the low barrier shelter, they would be asked to leave first thing in the morning and not return till 5 p.m. Well, that still leaves them out in the elements in a Prince Edward Island winter.
Yeah, that policy needs to change. People deserve access to warmth 24/7, 365, period, full stop. That's my opinion on that.
That is 100%. We're on the same page there. I agree 100%. Shelter should not have specific hours. Warmth and shelter are a human basic right, and they should be available 24/7.
I don't think people realize the trauma that just being out in the elements can cause someone. When you know that there's no escape, and for the individuals who are in a summer tent here up on Barrington or across the way at Green Road, or in the insulated tents on Prince Edward Island, you're still out in the elements 24/7. Just because you're zipping yourself into a tent doesn't mean you have escaped anything. Moving on, and Elysha, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a busy afternoon. Just pulling this off of the Facebook page, a mid-January program aimed at preventing homelessness on PEI is relaunching with fresh funding. What's that all about?
So that's in regards to the John Howard Society, another amazing organization. We stay in pretty steady contact with the John Howard Society, and over the last few years, we've referred quite a few of our clients to the John Howard Society. So what had happened was they had a program designed to avoid homelessness. So say somebody was falling behind on rent and was facing an eviction. The John Howard Society would provide the funding to, A, get caught up on rent. They also provided funding for damage deposits to avoid homelessness from occurring. Unfortunately, they had their funding cut. So during the roughly 8 to 9 months that they had their funding cut, we, as a non-funded nonprofit organization, we actually secured and covered 9 damage deposits for folks that we typically would have referred to the John Howard Society.
Wow.
They reached out to us. They were desperate. We no longer could refer them to the John Howard Society, so we did what we always did. And if you follow our Facebook page, you'll see that over the last 10 months, we would put public calls out there. We believe in transparency, but we also believe that everybody doesn't necessarily deserve to have their private stories shared. So we would give minimal details on the situation and basically ask our community members, please help us help this person. And I am thankful and blessed that I can say that in the months the John Howard Society had to pause their program, we successfully paid 9 damage deposits, which ensured that people had permanent housing.
And things are back on track with this organization now?
They finally got their funding reinstated. I was so happy for them the day that the news broke, so I reached out to my contact at the John Howard Society just to confirm I'm good now to start referring people back, and they were absolutely thrilled to be able to tell me yes. So now going forward, anybody that's in a situation that we can either avoid homelessness from happening, or they're in a situation that they've been living unhoused, but we have the opportunity to find them permanent housing, we can now refer them back to the John Howard Society for the assistance with either back due rent or damage deposit and assistance with getting into housing.
Elysha, I just want to say it is just an absolute treat to have you on this program today. I'm learning so much about the kindness and generosity of folks in Summerside, Prince Edward Island. I'm like, my heart is racing just listening to your stories. This is why I do this program, not only to educate, but just to let people know that there are times where the world seems a little unhinged, and I like to just bring back a little calm to the situation. So I thank you for helping me do that today. Let's give a shout out. Let's go back to some donations. I just want you to quickly talk about the Safe Summerside, and they're donating recycled bicycles. I know the importance for the unhoused to stay connected either with a phone, but getting around from point A to point B is very important as well. So how important is Safe Summerside to the village Summerside?
They are honestly invaluable to us. Like you just touched on, folks that are living unhoused, they still need a means to get from point A to point B. Especially if point A to point B could possibly be a shelter situation or somewhere that they can gain warmth and shelter. So teaming up with Safe Summerside has been invaluable to us. They have provided, I'm not sure the exact number right now, but I can tell you that every time we have somebody in need of a bike and we shoot that message out to Safe Summerside, typically within 48 hours we have a bicycle to provide that person. It has been heartwarming to see. And I know that you just touched on the fact that it's nice for you to hear how the community here comes together. I've seen the same thing on the Red Shelter Project page. While we may not always be able to count on government officials to step in and make immediate changes and offer immediate solutions, you see it far and wide. I've seen it on your guys' page as well, that community members are very quick to reach that helping hand out. And we're all very blessed when we can have community members that can sit back and say, you know what, a person needs this, I happen to have it, why wouldn't I help if I can't? And that's always been our thoughts here, is that, you know what, something that could be so simple to all of us that we have sitting in our home could mean the difference between life and death to many. I mean, there's been nights that I've delivered sleeping bags and buddy heaters, and there's a good probability that that person may not have made it to the next morning had the community not reached out with those donations. So at the end of the day, it's always heartwarming to see the community come together. And again, that's why we named it the Village. It takes a village. If we're all just going to sit back and hope that the higher powers that can make the proper changes are going to do it overnight, we're going to lose people, sadly. So it honestly takes a village, and the things that we can accomplish when caring, compassionate people just come together and help is amazing.
I believe when you do presentations or you speak on the radio or do a live stream, visuals are very important. And you one of the videos that you would put on your Facebook page was called Hands of the Homeless. Is that something that you put together or you borrowed from someone else? But again, I think it's important for people to see just the hands of the homeless. Can you tell us about that?
So we have a very close relationship with a lovely resident of Summerside who takes it upon herself. She keeps her basement stocked with all the essential supplies that we also provide. She provides daily meals to those who can make their way to her front door. She is an absolute angel on this earth. And a few months back, she decided to take it upon herself. Again, due to privacy reasons, it's very seldom that you'll ever see any of our clients' faces. But with permission, she started asking those that she was feeding, do you mind if we take photos of your hands? Because like you said, sometimes people need the visual. It's like that old saying goes, well, if it's not in my backyard, I don't see it. To add a visual to show everybody in the community just how much some people are truly struggling. Everybody knows that we have an unhoused population in our town, but they may not necessarily see it or experience it firsthand. What she has done here by forming these photos gives that visual to people, and it helps them understand that, you know what, nobody is immune from this happening to them at the end of the day. There is still a huge stigma around the unhoused population, and I can be the first person to vouch. It's so incorrect that it's not even funny. Not every person living unhoused is struggling with mental health or addictions. We are also dealing with a major housing crisis in the maritime provinces. PEI is not exempt from that. We have war vets who are sleeping on park benches because their pensions are just simply not enough to cover the high cost of rent. Nobody is exempt from possibly dealing with homelessness at any point in their life. And there's a long list of reasons that cause homelessness other than the typical stigma reasons. That's why I do appreciate the post that we made with the hands. She gladly let us use that just to kind of give everybody in the community a real eye-opening experience to see, look, these hands belong to people who deserve better than what they're giving.
And to be honest, those hands could be their hands in the near future. Like, you know, when we were protesting at Grand Parade Square, I remember too many elderly couples coming in on a fixed income or on pension, leaving with, you know, visibly shaking in tears because honestly, Elysha, it just seems like it's a matter of money. And if you don't have enough money coming in and there's more going out, it's mathematics. So the addiction and the mental unwellness, that probably soon follows when you're out on the street. Those are not the main reasons why people find themselves unhoused. It's rental eviction. They just can't keep up with the cost of living. That's my point on it.
I agree 100%, and PEI is seeing all the same things. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We're also in the middle of a healthcare crisis. That's what the meeting that was postponed the other night was in regards to, was our failing healthcare system over here. There are so many variables that work together that the end outcome could very well be homelessness for many.
Yeah, it's interesting times, just very interesting times. Do you kind of get a sense of how, like, I can't imagine the mindset of young adults, let alone kids that are just coming into the school system now. I mean, we see adults who just can't keep it together. Do you get a sense of how Islanders are feeling in 2026, Elysha?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think families at this point, they're stressed and they're tired. A lot of media coverage has touched on that and made it quite visible. I'm sure teachers and school employees are also feeling the effects of children being stressed and tired as well. I mean, right now, affordable housing is at an all-time low. So families are repeatedly being pushed into crisis mode, and that trickles down. I mean, any of us can understand that when you have stressed parents, it trickles down onto the children. So I'm sure a lot of families on the island are feeling the stress of that, the enormous cost, even just for groceries in 2026. Nobody should be forced to choose between paying rent or having food on their tables. I often advocate and speak regarding shelter being a basic human right. That's not the only basic human right that we're failing here. We're failing on a lot of fronts. And I know a lot of the schools are great to have the meal programs that you pay as you can, or you pay if you can at all. And those are all great, but there has to be a better long-term solution to this.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. Elysha Whitlock, Executive Director of the Village Summerside. One final thing before I let you go. You sent me your presentation to Council from last January, pleading your case for a warming center. I did some research last night. I didn't see any updates. Where are you with that request from a year ago for a warming center in Summerside, Prince Edward Island?
We have made no progress in terms of a warming center. I will say our mayor here in Summerside has been phenomenal. We are all on the same team when it comes to this subject matter, thankfully. So while the provincial government has not agreed on funding any warming centers in our community, our mayor has taken the initiative that when we do have extreme weather coming, he kind of gets ahead of the game there, and he makes those phone calls. He has those conversations, and we have successfully managed to have the emergency shelter stay open 24 hours during certain extreme weather. Now, I won't lie and say that it happens every time we're having extreme weather. Today, for example, we got a load of snow overnight, and there would be emergency shelter clients right now walking the streets of Summerside because there is no warming center open today, obviously, and the shelter is not open throughout the day. So I sadly have to say that since my last speaking engagement before our city council, we have not made progress in terms of a warming center. I've actually been working on my next public speaking event that I plan to go and once again reiterate the same points I did. I'm sure I'm starting to sound like a squeaky wheel at this point, but at the end of the day, if we stop talking about it, the attention kind of comes off the subject. I will not ever stop talking about the things that people in this community deserve or need, especially when, like I said, they're basic human rights. Nobody should be out in the middle of an East Coast winter roaming the streets all day long when there are many suitable buildings that could be used as a warming center. There are many services that could run 24/7 to keep these people safe, warm, and in some cases alive.
Yeah, there's no reason for anyone to be outside, but unfortunately people are. And the final thing I want to mention, you're going out after this chat to hand out tents. Can you give us a current number of individuals in Summerside who are going to be in the tents, and what's the age range? And one final thing, do you find people coming from other parts of Prince Edward Island because of the services that are there?
We do suddenly have an increase of folks coming from the eastern end of the island, Charlottetown being the main area. They tend to come up, but then they don't tend to stay too long. So I feel like they're almost traveling between different communities just to access resources until those resources are drying up or not available to them, and then they relocate back to the community they originated from. Today we are handing out, we got a call this morning for a couple that needs a tent, so that's what we'll be out this afternoon setting up and providing. Right now for Summerside, in terms of unhoused, there's roughly, I would have to take a guess at roughly 60 people living unhoused. For the folks that are living 100% outdoors in tents or encampments, we are sitting right now at 21.
21, okay. Do you have designated plots of land on Prince Edward Island for people to go and gather?
Okay, so I'm not sure if you saw our post. I did do a CBC interview last winter, and I know it may have been taken the wrong way by many. I was not point blank asking people to provide backyard services. But in a caring community like ours, that was the outcome. So out of the 21, more than half of those are actually on community members' private property where they cannot have their belongings taken. They cannot have their tents confiscated. They are safe. Many of those situations, the homeowners have actually extended power resources in the form of extension cords to the tents so that people have access to electricity while living in their tents. We don't have any designated areas, but we certainly have a lot of caring community members who have provided land for the tents to be set up on. Now, of course, not everybody living unhoused is willing or comfortable to go that route. So in that case, they do kind of just set up their tents where they feel they want to be set up. In many cases, that does involve, I know you're quite familiar with tent encampments being dismantled. In many cases, that involves us replacing tents when, unfortunately, they either get stolen or dismantled by city staff and taken away. But we just try to stay on top of that, and anytime somebody does lose any of their belongings, we're typically fairly fast at replacing them.
Elysha Whitlock, Executive Director of the Village Summerside. This is the first time Truth from the Booth has visited Prince Edward Island, and I want to thank you so much for sharing what's going on the island. Unfortunately, it's the same situation here and in many communities here in the Maritimes and across Canada. So just keep up the good work. Be safe out there. And again, just thank you for your expertise. And just a shout out to all the community members in Summerside and the surrounding area who is just stepping up and just helping out their fellow humans. Much appreciated. Thank you, Elysha.
Thank you so much, Matt.
To you listening right now on Folked Up Radio in one of 162 countries around the world, you have to know this about my home. Canada's a big place. Different accents, different politics, different opinions from coast to coast to coast. But every once in a while, something reminds us that we are still one country. And this year, the world stage did exactly that. When our athletes stepped onto the ice in the snow at the 2026 Winter Olympics and Paralympics in Milano, Cortina, Italy, nobody asked if they were from Nova Scotia, Alberta, Quebec, or the Yukon. The jersey says one thing: Canada. The Maple Leaf isn't regional, it isn't partisan, it isn't divided, it's shared. Because when Canadian athletes line up against the best in the world, they carry the same thing every one of us carries. A country built on different voices that still moves forward together. You don't have to agree with every politician, every policy, or every headline to understand that simple truth. Division makes noise. Unity makes history. So when the anthem plays, remember what that moment actually represents. Not a perfect agreement, but a country strong enough to stand together anyway. And in a world that seems to be pulling itself apart, that might be Canada's greatest strength. I'm Matthew, host of Truth from the Booth. Let's get you back to your Sunday soundtrack on 99.9 FM Perth Andover and folkedupradio.com.